What's going on, people? I'm Diyar and I'm joined by Hambo here to look ahead to the January transfer window. It feels so weird, but we're here right now talking about whether we should bring in players, whether we should sell any players, and also discussing the player contracts that's about to run out in the summer. That maybe should we renew some of them? Who should we renew? We're going to be talking all about Palace in this episode. But if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content and like the video if you do enjoy it. Hambo, January, how on earth have we made it this far? And it doesn't quite feel like it. The season started late and now we're talking about signing new players. But I don't know if this is a big window for Palace in terms of signing players. Do you think we need to go and strengthen any areas?
I mean, I first of all agree with you. It doesn't feel like it's going to be a big window for Palace at all. I think we do. I do think we do need to. I think we've seen in a few games this season that, you know, as much as Roy talks about there being a good depth of squad, and there is, I think, you know, the fact that we operate the way we do and we don't really use that squad means that when players are out and others have to come in, then they don't always appear to be 100% ready for the challenge. And lots of players need a few games to get up to speed. So, you know, freshening a squad up can have a huge impact, especially bringing in competition for places. But, you know, we don't have many gaps. So, you know, you talked about the possibilities of selling players. I think realistically, selling players, creating gaps in that squad in terms of numbers is the only way we're going to see any major action. But, you know, there's definitely, you know, we obviously tried to do business right at the end of the last window. So we're still looking at players for the future and potentially, you know, one, maybe two at a maximum signings for competing for the first team.
Yeah, what areas do you think that we should be potentially looking at? I think there was a report by The Athletic, which I think it was Don Firefield and Matt Wozenham who released that. And they mentioned two players in particular, Ismail Issa, one player that we tried to go in the summer, but Watford just laughed us off because we offered them £25 million. However, another player that we've been talking about at Palace for a long time now, not only the summer, is Odsonne Edouard from Celtic, who might not be signing a new contract and potentially could be leaving there, according to The Athletic, for around £27 million. Do you think Edouard would be, I mean, he's 22 years old, scoring goals, they seem that he wants to move on. Do you think that's a position that we should be looking at, a striker? Or for me personally, I feel like the right-hand side, that's an area that we need to potentially strengthen as well, because you got Andros there, and then after Andros, you've got Jeffrey Schlupp. You can play there, but that's not his natural position, and you haven't got anyone else.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you know, bottom line is, you know, we're looking at forward players, and in particular, we are looking at that right-hand side. It is needed to give competition. I think the fact that Jeffrey Schlupp has played there lately has maybe taken that little bit of pressure off, which is why I'm slightly uncertain that we would necessarily push the boat out for Sarr. You can understand Watford looking at, you know, a £25 million bid and saying, based on his age, based on the fact that he'd started to perform at Premier League level, if we're talking about the sums of money we're talking about for Zaha, you know, what business have we got offering 25 million quid for Sarr? But yeah, he's not torn the Championship up either. So that value doesn't feel like it's increased to me. So we're not going to go in with silly money if we do go for him. And Edouard's an interesting one. Obviously, he does play more as a central striker, but I think it's similar to the scouting of Brewster. I think we do look at not just where they're playing, also what they're capable of and how we feel we can develop them. You know, we looked at Eze at QPR playing centrally and felt that we could develop him on the left-hand side. And similarly, we looked at Brewster before he went to Sheffield United and looked at him. You know, he plays central, but I think we were looking that potentially he could play wide right as well, or potentially him playing wide right could push maybe Zaha out to the right-hand side. So there's lots of things that you can do within it. It's all about getting the right players for a good value. And you know, at the moment, especially for us, the right age, that's the big thing for us. A 22-year-old ex-Paris Saint-Germain youth in Odsonne Edouard, playing really well at Celtic, but you're not really judging necessarily his performance in that league. You're looking at the capabilities he has and the potential he's shown. And he's really developed as a footballer over the last, you know, season and a bit or so. You know, he looked good when they got him, but he's just kicked on, just looks a little bit more confident, a little bit more classy. And so, but I don't think he's going to come into the team and tear the place up. And I think Sarr would probably have a bigger chance of making an immediate impact.
Yeah, and then I'm looking at the other areas of the pitch right now. I don't think because I don't know about the viewers. Let me know in the comments down below. But the way I see January is that you strengthen the areas that you really need to. It's not a window where you just try go and buy players for value because teams know that January window, normally you go out there if there's an injury or you need depth, and potentially the only depth we need is down the right hand side. So apart from them two players, I really don't know who else we can go for. But the problem is we got a 25-man squad. We haven't had this situation before, but look at the bench, look at the starting 11. There's some good enough players there. So you have to sell before you buy it. So in this window, we'll be talking about players out of contract soon. But like some Max Meyer, personally, I would have liked to see him succeed at Palace, but let's be honest, I feel like it's done. He isn't even on a bench for Palace anymore, and we've seen it. It's not all about that. You see Jared Riedewald, who's just sitting on the bench as well, is not in Roy's plans. So, do you sell Max Meyer in this window for basically nothing? Or Hennessy, another player as well?
Hennessy. Whether he's ever going to get back fit this season, I'm not sure. But obviously, he's not going to get named in the squad unless we get rid of Henderson, maybe, if Hennessy comes back fit, because Butland's the number 2 now. And he's got to be thinking in his head that he's going to be pushing Guaita all the way for a starting place. And I think, you've got to look in the midfield as well. I mean, there's a definite conversation to have around centre-backs. We're talking about how many we've got who could play there. But as you say, contracts, and transfer links. There's an interesting question to answer there. But in the midfield as well, if Gyro's not playing, which, Roy seems to want to take him in and out of the side and keeps the players that he trusts the most in there. And at the moment, Luke has won his place back. And obviously James McArthur seems to play continuously no matter what. So, I can't help but feel there's definitely a gap in the midfield there. Something a bit different. We talk about that a lot. We have a lot of similar players who can play in that position. We don't have anything who's that little bit different, who plays central midfield, can do that box-to-box job, can screen when they're asked to screen. But for me, it's about carrying the ball as well, moving through the centre of the pitch. We see it all the time where, we don't attack through the middle that often. We tend to attack down the flanks and then try and bring it into the centre. So giving ourselves that little bit of an option for someone who's going to carry the football in the middle of the pitch, I think is something I would like to see. But it's a tough one. And I'm sure like me, you've sort of had your thoughts changed a little bit by the defensive problems at the moment, where you're thinking, okay, well, I didn't want to touch that. There was nothing wrong with that. Great keeper, best we've had in the Premier League, probably. So nothing you need to do there. 2, potentially 3 good options at right back. 2, let's call them good options at left back. 1 good option and one inconsistent option. And then, 4 or potentially 5 you can play in centre back. And you think, well, there's no need to do anything there. And Roy's comments suggest the same. He doesn't. He says, got a big squad, don't need to change anything. It's hard enough keeping people happy right now, but we're conceding goals, and if you don't change that defence and don't look at the defence, then you just have to look what's going on ahead of them. And that just goes back to the argument about, well, do we need something different in that central midfield? Lots to think about.
Yeah, but I don't think urgently though. The midfield can improve. The midfield can improve, but when you talk about January, Flynn Downs was another player that we was linked with, but of course it seemed like we won't be going after him in this January window from what I've been reading. And it's one for the summer. Them type of signings are one for the summer rather than bringing them in halfway through the season. But of course, yeah, you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say you're probably right, but the only way that would change, the only way we'll get a young player who's not for right now in a January window is if it's the right time to do a deal. And by that, I mean, if it's a player who's maybe the contract's running out and the club just want to grab some money for him, that's a good opportunity there. Or similarly, they're just in a place where they want to go and do a deal somewhere else and they need some money. You might find that that's an opportunity to do a deal for a younger player who's maybe for the development squad or for the bench at most. But you're probably right, and I don't see much of that happening.
Yeah. Well, you talked about contracts, so let's move on to that last bit. There's lots of Palace players who are going to be out of contract this summer. Here are some of them. Of course, I'll read them out. Michy Batshuayi, his loan deal ends in the summer. And then we got Jeffrey Schlupp, Mamadou Sakho, Andros Townsend, Christian Benteke, Patrick Van Arnold, Mitchell, Guaita, Klein, MacArthur, Ward, Meyer, Scott Dan, Kelly, Cahill, Hennessy, Wickham, Henderson, and also at the bottom of the list that I just realized is not showing is Sam Woods as well. Lots of players there, Hambo, that we should be talking about. So let's just play a quick game of should we renew or let them go? Because I personally feel like this window, not this window, from this period till the summer, is going to be massive because the scouting department knew about this, the recruitment staff knew about all these contracts. This is a perfect opportunity for us to rebuild. But of course, this isn't FIFA. You can't just quickly sell all of them and bring in youngsters. So we have to be realistic with our options. Let's skip the Michi Batshuayi a bit and let's go first of all to Jeffrey Schlupp. I think this one's going to be a bit easy, not less controversial. Are we keeping Jeffrey Schlupp or is it time to go?
Of course we are, you know. And frankly, I 100% support that as well. And I'll be saying this a lot, but I mean, as long as he wants to stay, you know, maybe he wants to pursue something else. But I'd be amazed if we haven't already had some sort of conversation with Schlupp about extending that contract. Frankly, I'd be amazed if something hadn't been agreed in principle already. But you know, he's a player that versatility he has. You know, sometimes it's a pain because you kind of think, oh, we seem to have shoehorned him in somewhere where there might be a better or less predictable option. But I think, you know, he's playing some of his best football at the moment. And the fact that he's slotted in on the right-hand side and has done a very good job out there just you know, shows the value he has in the squad. You know, you got a player who can play left back, who can play left midfield, central midfield, right midfield, and a striker. You keep those. And as much as I never want him as a central midfielder, you know, I can understand that he gives you that flexibility. So no brainer for me with Jeff.
Yeah, Schluppy is staying for me as well. Don't need to go too much into it. As you mentioned, can play different positions, provides that pace that sometimes we need in games. And also, when you're looking at the last time he scored out, and that game was against Tottenham, wasn't it? Yeah, it was against Tottenham. He didn't have the greatest of games, but then you went and scored a goal. So it's just Jeff. You have to keep Jeff in your team. And he's not that old as well. Next player now, that is going to be a bit controversial with Palace fans and has been for a while, Mamadou Sakho. And we have to take into consideration as well that these players can talk to other clubs in the January transfer window as they've only got 6 months left in their deal. So they can potentially line up another contract. So Sakho, I think I know that you are still a fan of this. Do we keep Sakho or is it time to go?
Right. I mean, I would keep him, frankly, but I know I'm probably going to be in the minority there. People look really closely at the cost and start going on about how much it costs to play. I mean, obviously, I don't see any value in offering him anything like the wage he's on now, and then that makes its own, you know, scenario. Really, if we offer him what he's probably worth to us, which is probably at least about half the money he's on now, does that then put us in a position where, you know, probably it doesn't really entice him to stay, and he will look elsewhere. You know, let's not forget he's been linked with a move several times. Very rarely stays fit for any long period of time. So it's got to be on our terms, and I think that will push the ball into his court. But you know, he's one of the younger of the centre backs we have. To me, he's an incredibly. He's not young, but he's younger. He's 30, isn't he?
But it's still not good enough.
So I think he is. I think he's more than good enough, and I think if he did half the things that Cahill did in the last match, the Twitter would be full of Mamadou Sakho's rubbish. He's a liability. Blah 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 blah. To me, he does so many great things, and the problem is we haven't seen him in the team enough due to unavailability. And for me, if you're going to criticise Sakho, you know, or at least talk about him not being worthwhile to keep with the team, it's the fact that he's not available enough. To me, it's not the fact that he's not got the talent. People focus on the kind of risk element. They keep talking about the number of mistakes he's made. The statistics don't bear that up. Yeah, he looks awkward at times. He does take the occasional crazy risk, but actual mistakes leading to goals, he's no worse than any of our other central defenders, and it gets overstated. There's a degree of confirmation bias going on there, and I think he gets way too hard a time.
No, but come on now. Ever since he's come back from his injury, don't you think that he hasn't been the same? Like I don't remember Sacco ever since that Keogh's coming to the team. I don't remember Sacco being the same player for us. Is it just the case that we didn't have a back line that strong enough? That's when Sacco was playing, he just looked like the better player because he has made mistakes. I don't know. We don't have the stats here, but he has made mistakes. And what I said before, it was not about his capabilities as a player, but he's turning 31 in February. So yes, he is younger, but he still doesn't fit what we want to do.
But no, I understand. But if you start thinking about our centre backs, he's younger than Cahill, he's younger than Dan, he's younger than Tompkins, he's younger than Kelly. You know, I'm just saying he's younger than all of those. So if you're talking about trying to do some logical decision making, you know, he is a very talented footballer who has in my view, an unfair reputation. But you know, unless he gets a run of games in the right partnership. And you made a good point there about Cahill joining and the impact that's had. He does not work well with Gary Cahill. When Cahill joined us, that in my head that was like, that's got to be the right partnership, Sacco and Cahill. But the problem is Cahill wants to play left-sided centre back, and so does Sacco, and they're both leaders. So you can't have two voices who play in the same position. You know. And want to give the same leadership. You can't do that. So you don't get the best out of Sacco when Cahill plays, and you don't get the best out of Cahill when Sacco plays. So unless you're talking about going back to the tried and tested Tompkins-Sacco partnership, which was for a long period of time the best partnership I think I've seen in the top division at Palace. I think they were absolutely superb. We didn't lose a game in like 15, 16 games with them at centre-back. They were absolutely superb. But, you know, time changes things. You know, we might have moved on and we might never get back to that. So, you know, but for me, if you're trying to draw up a list of pros and cons as to why to keep a player, if you accept the fact that or you at least hope he's going to be available more often than not, for me, you try and keep him, but on massively reduced wages.
Okay, look, I'll agree with you there. I'll keep him if it's majesty, massively reduced. Yeah, I don't want it to become majesty. If he has massively reduced wages, if he still is on high wages, I don't think it's worth it. He's just too injury prone, and we don't really get to see him play. But of course, as you mentioned, that Sacco and Tompkins partnership, could we see a return of that? Only time will tell. But for now, I don't know. I just said keep, but it's just I also don't mind it if he left as well due to his age and injury concerns. But you know, I'll just say keep for the reasons that I mentioned. But I also wouldn't mind it if he left as well. So I'm 50-50 with that one. Next player, Andros Townsend. For me, I think there has been a decline in his game. We have seen it, even though he has returned to form this season, a bit better than what we've seen in previous. He's still not the same Andros Townsend. But I'm keeping him. I'm not too sure about you, Hambo, but I'm keeping Andros because even if someone else comes down the right-hand side, which we don't have much depth in, I still feel like he can be a good option coming off the bench. What do you make with Andros? Keep or get rid?
I mean, I don't think he'd be happy being a bench player, and I think you're right. I think that's probably where he's heading. But he's a very, very talented footballer, and been much better this season. But similar to what you said about Sacco, I wouldn't be devastated if he chose not to stay. I think we will try and keep him. I think we will offer him a new deal, and I think he'll weigh up that. And if he doesn't want to stay with us, I think he'll have plenty of options. But it's a couple of years ago, it was an absolute. We would have to do anything we could to keep him. You know, that period where he played up front with Will for a few games, he was absolutely brilliant. But ultimately delivering goals and assists, he's become very inconsistent with that. And in terms of his all-round game, he's not contributing as much as he used to. But if you let him go, same as any of the players we're talking about, if you let him go and he leaves the squad, somebody has to replace him. And arguably, it's always going to cost you more to replace a player like that than it is to renew his contract. And I think he's probably at the top level got a good couple of years left in him.
But don't you think it is time to replace him? You said he's got a good couple of years, but a good couple of years as a starter?
I think it's a less urgent need than some other areas. That's what I say on that.
Okay.
But yeah,
And
decline, I think, is the right word.
Decline. All right, then. I'll keep him as a squad player. Christian Benteke. This one. See, you're laughing. I'm laughing because we renewed his contract, and then we're at this period where once again, do we keep him or do we let him go? I think keep him. I'm saying keep him because even though when he wasn't scoring goals, like I know this is going to be controversial. I know people are going to be like, "Where's the dislike button?" Let me quickly dislike this video straight away. But hear me out before you do. Even I said in transfer talk episodes, even when he wasn't scoring goals, he had this different role that many people didn't maybe appreciate as much. But he was helping others get into the game, and he's still doing that this season as well. But the difference is that he's scoring goals. Even when he wasn't scoring goals, he was still having a positive influence. I mean, apart from Jordan Ayew, who this season isn't at anywhere near the level he was what we saw last season, who else do we have? I think Benteke is, if not our best striker so far this season. I'm not counting Wilf there because we already know what Wilf is, but out of them, Benteke, Ayew, Batshuayi, he's probably the best. So I'm saying keep him for another season, but also there's an age factor, Hambo. He's turning, 31 next year. So what do? Keep or let go?
So there's two things really. The first is if we're having this conversation a matter of weeks ago, you probably get a very different answer, don't you? But if we're going to continue to play a system that suits him and continue to get people in and around him, you absolutely have to keep him. People get so hung up on the wages. He's not earning what he was when he signed for us. He signed for us on big money with clauses in the contract that kept him up the top of that list. That's not the case anymore. He took a massive wage drop to stay with us for that extra year, and more importantly, he's by all reports, and I think he's even been quoted in the press as talking about the fact he simply doesn't want to leave London. He doesn't want to leave. At the moment, he does not want to leave Palace. Now, if another option came along from him at the top level, playing in London, he might go there. But he's got no interest. I mean, Bruges have been linked with him, but he has no interest in going back to Belgium. He's settled and happy where he is. So, in that sense, he'll be doing all he can to stay in the Premier League and to stay at Palace. And I think that bodes well for us. I think that part of that is the reason why we've seen this upturn in form from him. I think he's incredibly motivated because he knows, other than what he's done in recent games, prior to that, with all the best will in the world, with all the hold-up play that he does, the opportunity he's got, however hard he puts the effort in training, he would have known going into this season that this was it for him. He was going to have to hang all of his hopes on finding another club in this country local to where he lives. That was his option because no way would we have wanted to keep him, other than the fact to kind of protect a value or to prevent the idea we have to go out and find somebody else to take his squad place, and find the money to do that. So I think all the stars are aligned for Benteke to stay for another year. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think we still need another striker. We can't rely on Benteke because, as you said, three weeks ago to a month, we're probably talking about Benteke potentially. It might be time to leave for him now because of age and he's not scoring goals. But this was a make or break for him, and he's proven that well last couple of games. But of course, he has to keep it up until the end of the season. But yeah, I'll give him another year. Patrick Van Aanholt now. I feel like we're both on the same page here. Personally, thank you. Thank you for your time at Palace. But at the end of the season, it might be worth replacing him because honestly, Mitchell needs to start. I'm getting tired of this. Mitchell, when he started, he proved out to be that he's a Premier League player. He's got potential, and now he's not starting ahead of him. And also, Van Aanholt, as good as he is going forward defensively, it's just so bad. Like it really is that bad. And I wanted for him to succeed, but it's just not going to work out. Maybe it's time for him to go to the Netherlands where he's been reported out to go. But Hambo, PVA, keep or let go?
Well, I mean, I'll start with an answer of let go. But I will talk a little bit around it because I'm not someone who out and out doesn't like PVA. I'm not going to do a Patrick and scream, get him out of my club and bash the table or anything like that. I'm not that far against him. I think things have started to turn for him, and I think a lot of that is the fact that he's keeping Mitchell out of the side, because Mitchell didn't do anything to deserve being dropped. Had some fitness issues, but ultimately what he gives us defensively. Don't get me wrong, Mitchell's not the finished article, certainly not at the Premier League level, even defensively. You know, he's good, but he's not absolutely outstanding. So, but Roy really rates PVA, thinks he's one of the best left backs in the division, and I don't share that. I think. I mean, look, it's such a stupid situation. Do you know what I mean? It's like we can all see it. We all know what it is. What it is, it's not that he's incapable of defending. It's just that the way he plays the game is that he wants to wander all over the pitch, and I don't understand why Roy accepts that. I know he like us, he will see the benefit when we start scoring goals and PVA's popping up in the penalty area and knocking them home or setting up a goal. But he is the opposite of the sort of person who wants his left back playing right midfield. So why he accepts it, I don't get it.
It makes no sense. Like, look at the Liverpool game. And some of the goals they scored, he wasn't even in the picture. For one of the goals, he flag kicked the air. I really don't understand it. Like, defensively, he is very poor. But going forward, he does his thing. But even that, is he that effective going forward that we should keep him for that reason? And now I think we're both letting go of him. I think we can agree on that. Now, till the summer, we need to bring another left back. So we need to find a replacement potentially to get in the summer. Personally, Mitchell's the number one. But there's that issue as well. You need another left back to cover Mitchell because you only have one.
Shame we never got that deal done for Ait Nouri, isn't it? And he ended up at Wolves. And scored against us. But there we go. But no, look, I think PVA is getting way too hard a time. I will say that he's getting way too much abuse, and I think that's out of order. But I think some of the glaring errors. However, mentally strong he seems. He seems like a very resilient character. Seems to enjoy the kind of the banter on social media. Doesn't let things get to him, but. I have to say, the way he's playing at the moment, it looks to me mentally like something's not quite right. For him to be taking the level of risk he is trying to intercept the ball rather than do the standard defending. Because you think about the most recent glaring errors, that's what it's been. He's been out of position and he's tried to get in the way of a pass and he's just let the man run. And we've been caught out by it for two specific goals I can think of recently. But we've got away with so much as well where it hasn't ended up with a goal. So, look, he's a good player, but, I think probably the other thing I would say is when he talked about, he was interviewed at the start of the season and he talked about the fact that in the last January window, PSV were linked with him, weren't they?
Yeah.
And he basically said in not so many words, talked around it, that he would have gone if we'd accepted the bid, but we didn't accept the bid. So I think maybe he's got one eye on a move anyway. And I think it would suit all parties.
And there were reports as well suggesting that even in January there's talks how he might go to Ajax. So it seemed like there's a big chance he might go to Holland, but we'll keep you updated in future transfer talk episodes. Vicente Guaita is an easy one. Keep him. He's a legend. You don't have to say much about him.
He's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere. Kleiny. Now, his contract runs out not in the summer, January transfer window. Yeah. So I'm saying keep him, and I'm saying he start him as well, above on instead of Ward, because I feel like he has been that effective. I mean, the Liverpool game, you're looking at everyone, no one was really good, but generally, I feel like he's one of the most underrated players at this Palace squad throughout the season. Of course, the first two games he did struggle because he hasn't played football for a year and a half. What do you expect? But he's settled in. So I'm saying keep Kleiny. What about you?
I think so. And especially with Ferguson's now, obviously, he's coming back from an operation and he's having that horrible thing that happens where you come back after a period out and your body takes time to adjust to the rigors of even training at the top level. So I think it's a thigh strain he's got now. So, it's not like the injury's recurring, but he's going to get muscle injuries. He's going to have to work really, really hard to get back. So, I'll be absolutely stunned if we haven't had advanced conversations with Klein about extending that to the end of the season. And I'd keep him beyond. He's better than Ward. And as I said on the other day, you've got to put the respect on Joel Ward's name for the fact that he's been the player he has for us, and he's still a superb right back at Premier League level. Loved the work he was doing, being the supplier for Benteke from the right hand side, which surprised everybody a little bit, didn't it? But
surprised me.
Yeah, exactly. But look, he's a brilliant player to have around the squad. Can play in a number of positions. So and we'll talk about Ward in a bit. But Klein, I think he suffers a little bit. You talk about being underrated, but I think that comes from the fact that he spent a long time out injured and not selected for Liverpool, and his loans were not successful. Particularly the Bournemouth one sticks out of the memory, doesn't it?
But he's underrated by Palace fans.
Yeah, he is. He's underrated. He's underrated by Palace fans, but a majority of whom, I say majority of whom, a large proportion of whom don't remember him in his first spell and how good he was for us. Let's not forget, those of a certain vintage will know this. He was being talked about as the best youth product to come out since Kenny Sansom. Obviously, Wilf's come along and gone ahead of that, but he was outstanding from the age of 17. Dropped into the first team. People obviously talk about Wan-Bissaka and how quickly he took to the first team, but Klein was on another level. Okay, a division lower, but he walked in there like he'd been there forever, and quite rightly played for England and quite rightly played for Liverpool. And now he's back to form, back to fitness. He needs that respect.
Yeah, James McArthur, the next player, 33 years old, which is quite worrying because I didn't realize he was that old. 33 years old.
Mate. That's a young guy.
Yeah. Well, to you, everyone's young. You're basically like Roy. So James McArthur, 33 years old. I think he's got a role on this side. I'm saying personally, let's keep Maka. But then again, I don't want to see him start 36 to 38 games next season because, as I said, that age factor, as much as we love him, as much as he can run about, it will take a toll on him. And we've seen it this season. And we're not even in the new year that he has struggled at times because he loves running about and he can't do that effectively as you grow older. But for me, I'm keeping him Hambo, just like Andros Townsend. We need to improve in that area, but I still feel like he can have a perfect role in this team coming off the bench for various reasons. You keep or let go?
Keep. And he absolutely keep. Look, he wants to. I think he said he wants to finish his career at Palace. He talks about the fact that he will eventually move back to Scotland. Probably doesn't necessarily mean that needs to be as a footballer. It might be after he finishes playing. I think he said he wants to stay at Palace and end his career at Palace, and I think he can do that. I think part of the issue is, sometimes it's a perception thing. A player, you do have to look at the player themselves and think about what their capabilities are and what their strengths are. And he has always had a fantastic engine in terms of the amount of ground he can cover. And the levels of stamina and fitness that he has, he's always been absolutely top, and that won't have changed that much. So I'm guilty of it as well. We get a little bit hung up on his age, but it does certainly. And talking about a new contract, he needs to be managed better. You need to bring him in and bringing him in out of the side to get the absolute best out of him. And I go back to back when you were a tiny child, Diyar, when we got Clint Hill. Yeah. And Clint Hill ended up playing. He had injuries after injury after injury just before we signed him off for Stoke. He was only 29 when we got him, but he had issues with fitness. But he ended up playing until he was 37, 38, and that was because they started to reduce the load on him. He didn't train every day. He was selected at the right times, and if it was the best thing for him to do not to train for a whole week, then Warnock would keep him out of training for the whole week and just bring him in for the match. And that changed his whole career. And that's managing players properly. That's looking at what they give you and trying to think, well, how can I have them at the optimum level? Now, there's all sorts of sports science people and medical staff at the club who will be looking at that, and they will be looking at the statistics more than we do about how does his cardio fitness work during the course of a game. But you cannot tell me that he got subbed in the third game in third game in a week, didn't he? And you can't tell me against Liverpool that he was at 100%. He was nowhere near 100%. Actually played okay first half, but he was not 100%. And at times, when you are carrying someone who's even fractionally below it, in an absolutely key position. In a midfield too, let's not forget. He's played a lot of his time in the 3. I think that was one of the big things that cost us against Liverpool. And we need to be really, really mindful of that. But love him, keep him.
Love him, keep him. Wardy, I'm keeping him as well. I don't have to talk too much about him. I'm keeping him because he's been a great servant to the club. And another contract, I feel like you can provide good depth for us on the right-hand side position. Of course, Ferguson hopefully should be back by next summer and next season. But, I keep him. I feel like in the future he can play different positions, maybe left back, help him out there. Mitchell at times. So, yeah, I'm keeping Wardy. You?
Yes, absolutely. The only question is whether or not he wants to stay or maybe try something a bit different towards the end of his career. But if he wants to stay, it would be stupid to let him go. Again, versatile player, committed player, still good quality.
Yeah. This one, Maya, for me, I'm letting go. It hurts me because I wanted to see him succeed. But it depends, doesn't it? If Roy's the manager, then of course let him go. But if another manager comes in, do you think there's actual enough quality in Max's game? Because people are now giving up on him. People have said he's simply not good enough. So is there a case that he's not good enough for the Premier League? We tried it, it didn't work out, it's time to move on? Or do you think it's just down to the management not getting the best out of him?
Simple truth is that we've never seen enough of him to be able to make that call. And we have to rely on the manager and coaching staff because, we've seen him start games, but not regularly. We've seen him most of the time. He gets judged when he comes onto the pitch for 10 or 15 minutes, usually when we were losing. And he's not getting in squads now. So simply put, if we've got any idea, when he'd be mad to sign another contract unless Roy gets sacked for some reason. So he'd be insane to stay anyway. So the question comes, do we want to get value for him? If we do, we can only do that by selling him in this window. So, look, you could argue forever about whether he's ever had an opportunity. I don't think he's had the proper opportunity. And I don't think he was ever going to suit any system that Roy Hodgson played. It seemed to be the idea was to play him in where we've now got Eze, and the idea that that's what he would be for us, a player playing on the left-hand side who would come into the centre. Even Ray Lewington said it at I think it was a trust event or something like that a couple of seasons back. Said, he wants to play on the left-hand side, moving in from the left-hand side to the centre. That's where he's at his best. But we never used him there. And I think a combination of his size and the form of other players and the fact that Roy felt he had a weak squad and we needed to focus on the midfield. The focus for the midfield was protecting the back line. And that's never, ever, ever going to suit Max Meyer. So been a waste of a few years for him. Very talented player. We've just never seen enough.
Yeah, still young, 25. So if he does go, then he's still got a bit of time, and hopefully he does settle elsewhere. So Scott Dan, I'm getting rid of him because I just feel like it is a good time. 33 years old, I understand that, and also he's had some good periods, but I think it's a good time because we're already stacked with centre backs. Maybe get rid of Scott Dan and get another youngster like Armel Bella-Kotchap. He's one of the players that will be linked with. So I'll get rid of Scott Dan. You go.
I was really impressed with him earlier in the season, but again, it depends. We're probably not going to get anyone come in and bite a hand off for him. Although I know he was linked with a couple of moves. I can't remember.
Yeah,
Fulham. Yeah. But for a while I thought, oh my God, he's just he's back to his absolute best. But the game against Newcastle was a real wake up call for what I was thinking. I think he was, I don't want to be too harsh, but pretty hopeless in that game. And I think unfortunately, the speed at which you have to play at in the Premier League, he takes a while to turn. If he stands off a player, he seems to now be jumping in to try and block a shot and not being particularly close because of the lack of pace. So I think you're starting to see problems develop at the top level. So providing we can get somebody else in, I think we can say thanks for the wonderful service to Palace, but pursue your career elsewhere.
Yeah, Martin Kelly. Some people might have forgotten about him, but he still plays for Palace apparently. I'm keeping him because once you get rid of the likes of Scott Dan and even if you don't get of his young centre backs, he's been a good squad player. I'm baffled on where he is. It's just that we've got that many depth at centre half positions. But I'm keeping Martin Kelly. He's still 30 years old. I say 30. It is going to the other side. He's slightly heading over there. But why are you looking like that?
Just the way you use the term "the other side," like as soon as you pass 30, you're nearly dead. That's
no. I don't mean it.
No, I know. Wrong side of 30.
Yeah, wrong side of 30. Yeah. So
the way you chose your words amused me.
I realise that. No, he's not. He's not that old.
Passing over to the other side.
I'm keeping him, but you keep or let go. Kills.
Yeah, just go back to the similar topic we talked about before. Versatility, can play right back, left back, and centre back. Never really lets us down. I think the only time we ever see any kind of mistakes creeping into his game seems to be when we play him regularly. So, you give him 4 or 5 games at a time and then take him out, and then you almost get the perfect situation. But I just got to say, as a player, he was a dream signing for us, right? Because never kicked up a fuss, never caused any issues at all, always dependable, plays wherever you want him to play, gives you. Very rarely do you get more than a 7 out of 10, but very, very rarely do you get less than a 7 out of 10. So, yeah, have to keep him.
Yeah, keeping him. Okay, so next we got Gary Cahill, which quickly I'm just going to say let go because, yes, he has been good for us and your face changed and people's face might change. But let's be honest, he's 35 years old. It is not... You're asking an awful lot for a 35-year-old to be a starter. And I guess Gary Cahill still wants to play football. So if he does, he might have to drop a division down lower or maybe go to another Premier League club and he might be able to do it there. But because we want to lower the average age of our squad, I feel like it might be the right time to move on. He's been good for us, don't get me wrong, but let's take everything into consideration. But for you, keep or go?
Keep, and I'll explain why.
Oh.
I think when you're doing the kind of work you need to do on the squad that we're having to do, I think you need to be really careful about taking the leaders out of that team too quickly. I think, you can really suffer. You can fill your squad with a lot of talent, but if there aren't the personalities and there's not consistency in the group there, if you start disrupting it by losing too many big personalities, you go back to when we lost Mile Jednak. As a player, it was a completely sensible decision. We got really good money for him, and he went on and played in the Championship for a while and was great in the Championship. But as a Premier League player, he was not up to it anymore. And that's people hate it when I say stuff like that. I've got stick before for saying it. But letting him go purely from being the club captain, it left a massive hole in our squad. And I do think, although Cahill's not been with us that long, I think he's excellent with young players. And if you think about the fact, if we're trying to sign 1 or 2 young centre-backs and bring them up to the level, being able to play alongside Gary Cahill and learn from him is a huge, huge positive. So keep him for his leadership. Obviously start to phase him out of starting every week and use him sparingly. That's the way to go.
Yeah. Look, these 3 I'm going to combine because I feel like they deserve a combination. So Wayne Hennessy, Connor Wickham, and Stephen Henderson. You're laughing because that's the reason why I said it, because I know them 3 names is going to be pretty clear. Let's just say this. With Wayne Hennessy, I've been crying for years to get rid of this player because it's never going to work out. And this is no hate to him. It is just not going to work out between Hennessy and Palace. It is as simple as that. So Wayne Hennessy, go. Connor Wickham, he's always injured. Go. Stephen Henderson, I'm not going to lose sleep over that. Hambo, disagree or agree?
I've just noticed my PC isn't plugged in, so I'm about to shut down battery-wise. But let me answer that. I won't be on screen while I answer it, but I will be speaking, and you will be able to hear me.
Yeah.
So first of all, Connor Wickham, absolutely. Even I've given up on Connor. Very, very talented footballer. But that's the charger plugged in. Talented footballer. But when you've been injured for that long and you can't stay fit, it's over for you. And there's not even any sense in trying to keep some sort of value. We've tried. We've looked after him. I think the extra year he got, from what I gather, was a really important thing to do for him as a person. It's got very little to do with him as a footballer. I think as a person, I think it was important that Palace respected the fact that he's an employee of the football club and was at a point in his life where injuries had really paid such a horrible toll on his well-being. Absolutely right to look after him, and I applaud Palace for doing that. And when people were getting angry about it, oh, we're not a charity, blah 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 blah, you just don't understand welfare. It's about welfare of people sometimes. So absolutely the right choice. But I think hopefully he's in a better place and to be able to move on and try and get something of his career back on track, because he needs it. Henderson is a backup keeper. And if we need to keep a backup keeper, we can maybe give him a deal for another year or so. They've got some talented young keepers coming through as well, so maybe there's not a huge need for that. Butland coming in means the end for Hennessy, in my view, not just through injury, but I think it's obviously a very bad injury he got, and you don't wish that on anybody. But that's come along at a time where I think it forced Palace's hand to do what they've been planning to do for a while, which is bring Jack Butland to the club.
It's going to be a relief, and I'm just saying how I feel when Hennessy leaves the club, because I just don't want to chat about Hennessy anymore. Even when he's played good, I tried to back him up, and Palace fans still don't like him. When he's played bad,
I just want to say that the thing with Wayne Hennessy, it gets lost in all the anger, and I get why people really wanted to defend him, and I respect people who want to defend players. But the problem with Wayne Hennessy was never that he's a terrible goalkeeper, as much as sometimes it seemed that way. The problem with Wayne Hennessy was that he was not ever, in my view, up to the standard you need in the Premier League for your number one goalkeeper. There were games where there was one game, I think it was Chelsea, and I think it was a game against Arsenal, where he was absolutely outstanding and made some brilliant saves. But on a consistent basis, he was never seemed to be switched on enough during the course of games. He never makes, when Guaita makes a save, and you're like, oh my God, how did you do that? Never from Wayne.
No. I remember, I think it was about 3 years ago. I think it was Man United away. We might have lost the game, but he had a good period of time. I can't remember what year it was. He had a good period of time. But Hambo, you were saying this, because I won't forget this. You were saying this, and not only you, other Palace fans. He's playing good because he's doing all the basics that he needs to do. He's like, you'll still discredit him even after he's played good. That's why at that point I just realized it's time to move on. And this was 2-3 years ago. That's why it's going to be relief, because as I said, what can the guy do when he's playing good? But then again, Liverpool game, you saw how poor he was. I think that's the last game we played for Palace.
But that's a really good point that you raised. But what we're trying to say when we say things like that, myself and people who said similar. When we're saying he's doing the basics right, we're saying about doing the basics that a good number one Premier League goalkeeper does. He's obviously, if you look at the fact that he's played international football as much as he has, and he's played Premier League football as much as he has, he's obviously a very, very good goalkeeper, right? Yeah. But the problem is when you're looking at him, you're saying, oh, he's had a good game today. It's because you're looking at it in the context of how he usually plays, and you're going, okay, it seems really good, but think about the difference between when Wayne Hennessy has an outstanding game and Guaita has an outstanding game. Yeah, that's the difference. That's the difference.
Yeah, there is. Well, look, that's it for today. I didn't realize we were going to be talking about Palace for this long. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure to leave a like.
Please, I know you want to do the like thing. I just want to say, just so you know, we're recording this on Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day.
That's false.
Christmas Day. All right.
That's false. Hambo, he's a true liar. But yeah, make sure to leave a like. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. So you don't miss out on future content. And also let us know what you think. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Who should we bring in? Who should we sell? Who should we renew? Let us know. And until next time, up the Palace.